The woman stormed into a cutting-edge research facility in the United States with a look of fury on her face, determined to retrieve her husband, who was worth 400 billion yen. She claimed that after being killed by Thanos, her body had been taken away by the director of the Celestial Bureau for Research. That night, when she saw her husband's body dismembered into pieces, an overwhelming sense of heartbreak overwhelmed her. She immediately activated her magic. Though the place was heavily guarded, no one dared to interfere. She gently touched her forehead, trying to sense a glimmer of hope through her magic, but there was none. In despair, she left alone in silence. Upon returning to the car, she saw the last letter her husband had left her before his death. Suddenly, a bold idea came to mind. She drove to the small town in the county where she and the royal family had planned to spend their golden years together. Opening the letter, the meticulously designed house plans left her unable to contain her grief any longer. She no longer cared about anything else. She would use all her strength to build a place where her husband could exist. In an instant, crimson magical energy erupted from her center, spreading wildly in all directions, transforming everything in its path into the form she had always longed for, the appearance of the 1950s. Soon, the entire town was completely covered, and in the blink of an eye, Wanda and the house from the original design were built. She even used magic to construct a virtual art studio, where everything looked so real within the range of her magic. After expending a massive amount of energy, she succeeded. Welcome home. Immediately, she eagerly focused her intelligence on this black and white comedy world she had always dreamed of. He decided to fulfill his promise to grow old together with his husband in this virtual world he had created. However, the town he had covered with his magic was completely isolated from the outside world, and the thoughts of all the original residents were under his control. The once down-and-out man who made a living selling used pianos became a famous pianist, and the lonely elderly woman found a companion. Everyone's life in this Truman-like world underwent a complete transformation, and Wanda finally lived a happy married life with Kwangsher. However, the good times did not last long. One day, strange sounds suddenly came from the radio. Then, colorful toy airplanes appeared from the bushes nearby, standing out starkly against the black and white world. At night, someone emerged from the sewer, with the Tianjin Progress logo on his back. However, Wanda didn't want to pay much attention to it. After returning home, she told her husband that she wanted a child. No sooner had she finished speaking than her stomach began to react. Immediately, the black and white world began to fill with color. The next day, Wanda's stomach swelled significantly, and as she was about to give birth, she rushed to find a doctor. But just as the doctor left, Wanda's baby was about to come out. Fortunately, her neighbor Monica came to help, and Wanda successfully gave birth to twins. However, this reminded Wanda of her twin brother, Karen. Monica's words left Wanda speechless. She knew the memories of everyone in the environment, and Monica was clearly not among them. Seeing the sticker on her chest, Wanda understood everything. Monica was an undercover agent sent by the Addition Bureau. Wanda then used her magic to drive her out of the environment without harming her, but they did not give up and sent a drone to try to kill Wanda. This move made Wanda completely enraged, and she dragged the wrecked drone out of the barrier. However, the director of the chip machine was not convinced. He directly used his mental powers to control all the guns and point them at the director. He was terrified. However, Wanda did not kill him. He just did not want to be disturbed and wanted to live a normal life with his family. These twin children were born and grew up in just one day, and each of them had their own superpowers. The older brother inherited his mother Wanda's chaotic magic, while the younger brother inherited his uncle's ability to mimic accents. Out of deep longing for his older brother, Wanda created a happy family in a fantasy realm. On Halloween, the family dressed up and attended the festivities. The two children followed the voice and ran around the town, immersed in the joy of the holiday, or walked alone to the edge of the town, only to find that the farther they went, the stranger the scenery became. The residents seemed to be acting strangely, their eyes filled with tears. As they continued walking, some residents were unable to move, and in the distance, there was a small car parked, with a neighbor who often visited their home sitting inside. Agatha saw this and quickly used the power of the Mind Stone to wake them up, but Agatha asked, "Why are you here? You're supposed to be dead." As her emotions gradually collapsed, she looked around and quickly restored everything to its original state. She knew that these strange phenomena must be related to her, so she decided to leave the town to investigate further. However, a massive energy wall at the edge of the town blocked her from passing through. She didn't know that outside, agents from the Heavenly Bureau were keeping watch, and the wall began to crumble as soon as any energy leaked out. She first heard the agents calling for help, but as soon as they finished speaking, she couldn't move. Inside the town, her son sensed his father's presence fading and rushed home to tell Wanda. Wanda immediately cast a spell to stop all movement in the town. Time seemed to freeze in that moment, then a powerful energy was released, causing the magic to expand its coverage until it once again engulfed the flames. However, Chenjue's army was also caught in the spell, with helicopters turning into hot air balloons, armored vehicles becoming fried pancake carts, and ordinary soldiers transforming into circus clowns. By the next day, the magic's coverage had doubled in size, and he awoke. He awakened a member of the Celestial Bureau, and the two began chatting. Through the Celestial Bureau member, he finally learned about his past, and only then did he understand his well-meaning intentions and the deep love he had for him. But the real trouble was just beginning. It turns out that this Agatha is the true hidden big boss. She is the longest-living witch in the present world, blessed with extraordinary fortune, which granted her access to a dark book. Through years of relentless study, she spent centuries mastering the lower levels of black magic. However, due to her lack of natural talent, her spellcasting was always inconsistent, and she could never replicate the chaotic magic she had witnessed, which allowed one to control an entire town at will. She hatched a sinister plan to obtain even greater magical power. Disguised as a friendly neighbor of Wanda, she waited for the opportunity to absorb Wanda's energy and make it her own. Wanda, of course, wouldn't let her get away with it. But after releasing her magic, she discovered her hands were rapidly aging. Agatha didn't give her a moment to breathe. Wanda had never seen such bizarre black magic before and could only control a car to attack from behind. But by the time she got close again, Agatha had already vanished. Just then, a completely white figure suddenly appeared. Wanda walked over to investigate, only to find that the city of Bay High was about to explode. In the midst of the crisis, a figure suddenly flashed by, knocking away the worshipper. It turned out to be the husband Wanda had created in the environment. Soon, the two matters became entangled. Just then, Agatha reappeared, this time with an even more intense attack. She first broke the mental control Wanda had imposed on all the townspeople. The residents, now regaining their senses, surrounded Wanda, demanding an explanation. Wanda's emotions spiraled out of control, and his magic went haywire, nearly killing everyone. Fortunately, he managed to regain his composure in time. At that moment, he also realized that the residents whose minds he had altered were not living happily. He shouldn't have built his own happiness on the suffering of so many others. He then summoned his hands and began to withdraw the barrier he had cast. In an instant, a crimson light shot into the sky. Under his spell, the magical barriers around him gradually cracked and vanished, all returning to Wanda's body. The residents nearby saw this and fled in panic. Soon, the illusions in the town collapsed, and everything returned to its original state. Tian Jianju, who had been waiting outside, saw this and prepared to charge into the barrier to eliminate Wanda completely. However, Wanda had forgotten that recalling his illusions would also render his battle axe ineffective for 4 hours. The two children also faced the same problem. A century-old dilemma suddenly descended upon Wanda. Should she return freedom to the innocent civilians, or cease her spell to save her beloved child and husband? As she watched her beloved fade away bit by bit, Wanda could no longer endure it and withdrew her spell, only to be ambushed by Agatha, who seized the opportunity to launch a devastating counterattack, using dark magic to drain the chaotic magic from Wanda's body. To make matters worse, the army of the apocalypse had also arrived. At this point, the family had no choice but to unite and fight together. The two children unleashed their superpowers and joined the battle. Their innate synergy allowed them to easily defeat all the soldiers. On the other side, the two continued their previous battle. In reality, this was the remnant of a body that had been reawakened by the historical data machine, with all its memories erased. Bai Hua, from the moment he first saw him, became curious about his origins and past. However, he deeply understood his feelings and transmitted all the memories he knew to Baishe, allowing Baishe to learn about his past and see the fleeting moments he once shared with Wanda. Thus, the dual crisis posed by Baishe and the historical data machine no longer existed. Now, the only remaining threat was Agatha, their primary enemy. Wanda's red magic failed to gain the upper hand, so she immediately resorted to her equally masterful mind control, sending Agatha into her most terrifying memories. However, she didn't expect Agatha to have already prepared defenses against Wanda's mind magic, effortlessly countering it. Just as Wanda was on the brink of defeat, a crimson glow suddenly appeared above her head. Wanda's rolling power began to awaken, unleashing a powerful energy that instantly turned the tide of battle. She then escaped the mental realm alongside Agatha. Even after awakening, the Crimson Witch was still unable to break free from the dark magic's constraints. Every chaotic spell she cast was absorbed by Agatha, and with each absorption, she aged further. However, Wanda didn't care and instead intensified her magical output. Agatha allowed the spells to hit her body and absorb them, eventually causing Wanda to exhaust herself to the point of extreme aging and collapse. Agatha, seeing this, prepared to end the battle with a fatal blow, but her magic inexplicably failed. Wanda gradually regained her youthful appearance. It turned out that during her continuous spellcasting, she had secretly cast an ancient spell. Now that the true magic has taken shape, the space where the two of them are located is Wanda's exclusive magical domain, and all other magic is completely ineffective. Thus, she sent the magic that Agatha had just absorbed back to the West Sea, and the chaotic power within her body was fully awakened. This was the true form of the Crimson Witch Agatha, who was completely defeated. However, Wanda did not wish to kill her, so she cast another spell to transform her back into the friendly neighbor she once was. All crises resolved, Wanda once again faced the same difficult choice. She first withdrew the magical barrier, and as it slowly retreated, she returned home with her family, deciding to use this time to reunite with them. After all, illusions were true death, and she couldn't spend her entire life in this self-deceptive virtual world. After putting the children to sleep, the barrier began to dissipate, and the two began their final farewell. Though they were filled with 1,000 regrets, both knew that letting go was the best choice. This time, Wanda lost everything once again. She left in a daze and built a lonely hut on a desolate island. There, she diligently studied the dark book left by Agatha and once again found traces of Galen's whereabouts. His return marked the beginning of his invincible reign, but it also signaled the start of his bitter rivalry with Doctor Strange. However, as fellow magic users, Doctor Strange is naturally no match for Scarlet Witch in his normal state. To stand against her, he channeled the power of the multiverse into his own corpse and engaged in a life-or-death battle with the undead from Hell. Ultimately, Doctor Strange emerged victorious, subjugating the undead and activating the thousand-handed goddess mode. With the undead's power, Doctor Strange's combat strength skyrocketed. He could transform into various forms using the undead and generate shields. As a result, Scarlet Witch's chaotic magic ultimately controlled the undead to send Wong into danger. However, Wong, who had mastered dark magic, was too powerful. Even the zombie Doctor Strange and the Old King teaming up couldn't defeat him. As a member of the Avengers, how did they gradually turn against each other and end up fighting for their lives? This all traces back to the Strange.